What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react to some big news, some breaking news, actually. Apparently, Donald Trump is back on the toilet again, tweeting, or as he calls it, truthing, at like 10 o'clock last night, as we all do, I guess. And it's actually really, really big news that has to do with the United States and Canada. And he is saying right here, in all caps, of course, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. It's done. It's over. And this is just, disastrous. And I want to understand where this is all coming from. To be honest, this is not the first time that this has happened. I've actually made other videos before. This is like the 27th video or something. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but it feels like that he's talked about, oh, the all trade with Canada has been canceled for this or that. And yeah, this isn't something that Trump should just be tweeting or truthing to the world lightly, So I don't know how seriously to take this, but we're going to get into all the details and what's going on. But, it is interesting to me that this comes basically right after Mark Carney made a speech the other day announcing that Canada is going to be distancing itself from the United States and that Canada doesn't want to have to rely on the United States. And I can't help but wonder if this is a reaction to that. If Donald Trump is reacting to that, like as if Trump wants to say, no, you can't leave us because we're ditching you first. We're leaving, so you can't leave us. I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much before we actually understand everything that's going on. But I just thought the timing of that was kind of weird. But let's take a look at the message here. Donald Trump truthed this message. The Ronald Reagan Foundation has just announced that Canada has fraudulently used an advertisement which is fake. Canada has used an ad or created an ad that is fake, featuring Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. What? So, we are going to have to take a look at this advertisement, obviously. Is he saying Ronald Reagan is fake in the video? Like it's AI generated Ronald Reagan or something? Or it's deceptive? Or how is it fake? Because that's a really big claim. The ad was for $75 million? Oh my God. Where is this ad broadcasting? Why does this matter? Why does it matter if Canada is showing Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs? If there's video or audio of Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs, I think you should be free to, spread that or share that. I don't know how that's fake or illegal, or I don't know what we're trying to say about it. They spent $75 million on this. They did this to only interfere with the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court. So I think he's talking about how the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, is deciding if all the tariffs that Donald Trump has been doing, like they're deciding if it's all been legal or like allowed by our Constitution or... So that's a really big deal, by the way. Like Donald Trump has been able to just put these tariffs into action and just speed these into effect and into policy. And like the Supreme Court of America is going to decide, wait, was this all legal? Is this okay? which could have huge ramifications on Donald Trump's tariff policies. And he is basically accusing Canada of interfering or manipulating the Supreme Court's decision with an ad featuring Ronald Reagan. Am I understanding this all correctly? Tariffs are very important to the national security and economy of the United States. Sure. Based on their egregious behavior, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated? Thank you for this. Thank you for your attention on this, Donald Trump. What is going on? First of all, I have to get to the bottom of this whole Ronald Reagan ad. Why, if Canada is doing that, why Canada is doing that, what the ad says, if the ad is fake, and even given all of that, is it interfering with Supreme Court decisions? And even with all that, should this all determine the trade policy of the United States with Canada? Should, based on a tweet at 10 o'clock at night, that just a split-second decision should, and his Donald Trump's assessment of this situation, probably a hasty assessment, possibly affected by Mark Carney's statements the other day, has just decided the trade policy of Canada and the United States, and that it's over. That's, I have to say, before even researching anything and getting to the truth here, that's just great. You know, as an American, that's not what I want to hear my president saying. I don't want his decision making to be like this. No matter what you think politically or who you are, I think every American should sit back and be like, is this a logical thought process? Is this what we want from the leader of the United States to be deciding the fate of the U.S. and also Canada in a lot of instances, just by like watching a random ad of Ronald Reagan? I don't know. Let's see here. Let's keep going. So the news headlines are saying Ontario has been running a $75 million anti-tariff ad in the United States. So this is Ontario. And this is Doug Ford, who I think is the, what do you call it, premier of Ontario. They have made this ad campaign. I didn't know anything about this. These ads have not been like terribly effective or widespread, I have to say, because I'm American and I've never heard of these Ronald Reagan ads. Anyway, for the sake of argument, let's say it looks like this is happening. $75 million in ad placement. A lot of Americans are probably going to see. It's Ontario. It's Ontario running these ads aimed at anti-tariff statements. And it uses audio from the former President Ronald Reagan from 1987. Okay. So we're getting to the bottom of this a little bit. For one thing, this is Ontario's ads. Doug Ford, presumably, running these ads. Oh my God. Did anybody see that gnat fly on my nose? What the? It's the ads. Did Canada pay for this gnat to fly around to distract me from getting to the truth of this? I don't know. The conspiracy just goes on and on here. Anyway, I don't know what that was. This is just Ontario doing this. So why are we punishing all of Canada and also the United States, which is going to be affected by this, by just like Doug Ford and Ontario doing this? Ontario is not all of Canada. So that's a thing. Like if Massachusetts like randomly did something, one state, and like all of America was punished, I would think that's pretty unfair and unreasonable. So for one thing, this isn't even all of Canada. It's not like Mark Carney is running these ads. It's Ontario. That's one thing. So they do admit it is using audio from Ronald Reagan. Trump, specifically, is calling this fake. What is fake about using words that Ronald Reagan have said? I assume these are statements Ronald Reagan have made. It's not like fake or like AI generated Ronald Reagan, right? So, the Ronald Reagan Foundation and Institute has made a statement on all this. So, like Ronald Reagan's estate. And I believe this is what got Donald Trump worked up about all of it. Because it sounds like these ads have been going for a week or two. But, looking at that headline, that was like 2 weeks old, right? So nobody cared about this for like 2 weeks, and now all of a sudden it's a huge deal. I'm curious why that is. The Ronald Reagan Foundation learned that the government of Ontario created an ad campaign using selective audio and video of Ronald Reagan, delivering his radio address to the nation on free and fair trade from April 25th, 1987. So their grievance is that the ad uses selective audio, like that it's misrepresenting what he's saying. Yeah, it says the ad misrepresents the presidential radio address, and the government of Ontario did not seek permission to use the remarks or edit them. Okay, there might be something here. I don't know. I don't know the laws around all of this. I believe Canadians can place ads in America as long as it doesn't like interfere with our elections or something. But if you want to run ads about how much you hate tariffs and stuff Ronald Reagan said, Canadian or not, I think you're allowed to do that in America. That seems like that doesn't sound illegal to me. Now, is it illegal to misrepresent what Ronald Reagan said? Maybe. Or to selectively edit what he said? Maybe. There might be something there. The Ronald Reagan Foundation is reviewing its legal options. We encourage you to watch the unedited video. I need to see this ad. That's what we're going to do next. This is Sky News covering this, and we're also going to watch the ad that's in here.
Well, breaking news, Donald Trump has declared the US is ceasing all trade negotiations with Canada. The US president says the country used a fake ad featuring former President Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs.
Okay. When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs.
Huh.
And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time.
Oh, wow.
In the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer.
I mean, so far, if you just listened to this and you had no idea if it was edited or what, if you just listened to this, it sounds like Ronald Reagan was really, really anti-tariff. And again, there's no problem with sharing that if that was his genuine feelings. But that is the impression I'm getting, that Ronald Reagan, doesn't like tariffs at all. So this would be an effective ad if you're influenced by that.
High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars.
Ronald Reagan knew what he was talking about with that. It has triggered retaliation and trade wars. Yes, that is very true. That has literally happened. So it's hard to even argue what he's saying.
Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs.
Okay.
Throughout the world,
wow,
there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition.
Wow.
America's jobs and growth are at stake.
Wow, there he is. There's Ronald Reagan. I assume that's a real video right there. I assume all of this is real. The Ronald Reagan Foundation didn't deny that these were his statements. They are saying that they have been edited somehow or misrepresented. Taking this at face value, it's not even I'm surprised Donald Trump is so upset about this. It's not an ad that's directly making fun of Donald Trump. It's not showing Donald Trump's image, or it's just talking about tariffs. So, at face value, I have no clue how this could be problematic. Like, if Canada wants to spend $75 million, that goes to American broadcasters, selling these ad spots. If Canada wants to do that and educate people about stuff Ronald Reagan said about tariffs, I don't have a problem with that. And I don't, it's kind of annoying to think this is what's like influenced our whole trade policy with Canada now. Now, before we totally pass final judgment, I do have here the Ontario TV ad that we just watched. This is the copy of it. This is the text. This is word for word everything in that ad that of Ronald Reagan that he says right here. It's this paragraph. There it is. Not too long, but that's everything he said. Let's compare this to the original speech that Ronald Reagan gave. So, the original speech that these remarks have been taken from looks like this. It is 2.5 pages long. It is, to be fair, way longer than the ad of Ronald Reagan. His full speech, it's like 10 times longer or something. I don't know. Like 6-7 times bigger, more text. So that right there, there's an argument that maybe his words have been taken out of context. I don't know. I went through and highlighted the text that was taken out of his original speech. So we have a sentence right here that's been highlighted, a sentence here that's been taken, another one here that's been taken. You can see visually, and then another one at the end, America's jobs and growth are at stake. Who knows what Ronald Reagan said during all of this part of the speech? Well, you can pause this video and read it if you want. But you can, pretty clearly see they didn't go word for word and give his speech on the ad. They have taken sentences, in this case it was the middle of a sentence kinda, and they have kind of stitched them together to create what sounds like a short speech by Ronald Reagan, but it was in fact much longer. So that's fair. Now, where the problem is like you're going to argue, everyone can argue, where do you cross the line with this? Like, where is it manipulating? Where is it fake? As the word Donald Trump uses is fake. It's not fake. Ronald Reagan said these words, but you can see, like, some of this stuff is just kind of randomly taken from his speech. And he says a lot of other stuff in between the words. So maybe his message was different than what... It's hard to say. If you have the discipline, you should go through all of this and really... But I just put it all into AI to speed things up. So I put all of this into AI, the two speeches, and I kind of asked it, what's going on? So Ontario ran an anti-tariff ad using Ronald Reagan's remarks. The Ronald Reagan Foundation is criticizing it for selective use of his speech. That's true. That is true. It is selective use of his speech. That is literally true. Trump then took that and said all trade negotiations are terminated, which is a pretty extreme response. He could have just said, take the ad down if it's illegal or violating. I don't know. Like, where does misinformation and stuff, where does that begin and end? It's tough to say here. This is actually a very good example of, like, I would say, well, clearly this is not exactly what Ronald Reagan said. That's true. But maybe he would, maybe it's just a condensed version of what he said, Fact-checking it. The fact-checking that Ronald Reagan Foundation announced that it was fake, that's kind of true. The foundation clearly has a problem with the ad, and it sounds like they're going to be suing. They spent $75 million placing this ad. Will it interfere with the U.S. Supreme Court's decision? I forgot that's something Donald Trump is arguing. Will this ad influence the United States Supreme Court and their decision on tariffs? I doubt it. That's a really big stretch to me. Like, especially at this point, this tariff stuff has been going on for months, and the idea that this random ad of Ronald Reagan, manipulated or edited or whatever, is gonna influence the Supreme Court judges, that is a huge stretch to me. I don't think that's what the intent of this ad was. Maybe it's a side effect. I don't know for sure, but I don't think so. Let's keep going. What he actually said, what Ronald Reagan actually said, pro free trade themes, and praised eliminating Canadian tariffs. So it sounds like he generally had the sentiment of what the ad is saying. There's basically, I want to know how much manipulation is this ad causing? Like, were Ronald Reagan's words twisted or not? So that's where this chart comes into effect. We have here comparing Ronald Reagan's original message to the Ontario ad message that was edited. And we're going to see a couple examples of how they compare. So Ronald Reagan's original speech, he discussed a trade dispute in 1986 with Japan, cautioning Congress not to pass broad protectionist laws. Whereas in the Ontario ad, it's more framed as a universal anti-tariff statement about tariffs in general are bad. Whereas in the original message, it sounds like he was really talking about trade and tariffs with Japan. So that's a good example of like, maybe Ronald Reagan wasn't just against tariffs in general. And I have to say, by watching that ad, I would definitely have taken away that Ronald Reagan hates all tariffs. That is definitely what the ad was saying. It sounds like that's not exactly what Ronald Reagan meant. Ronald Reagan was opposed to protectionist tariffs, but justified the use of targeted tariffs, like specifically semiconductors. In the Ontario ad, it says all tariffs are harmful, and it omitted Reagan's nuanced position. It didn't include that. So that's pretty darn important. I would actually say, given that alone, I don't know the laws around this stuff, but I would say that's a very, very good argument for the ad would have to be taken down for misrepresenting what Ronald Reagan was said. And again, I don't know the exact laws about how much you're allowed to edit stuff. Obviously, you're allowed to edit things in commercials and ads, even things people have said. I've seen plenty of ads do that, and they were on TV and they were legal. So maybe this is all legal, but I would say it is against the spirit of what Reagan was saying. So Reagan tried to argue for a balanced trade policy, free trade, and fair enforcement. And the ad argued pure free trade and implied any tariffs contradict Reagan's ideals. That I agree. The ad sounded like Reagan was against any and all tariffs. That's what I got that impression. Sounds like that wasn't true. In 1987, Reagan encouraged avoiding repeating the mistakes of 1930 and defending U.S. interests. In the ad, it portrays Reagan as a blanket opponent of any trade restrictions. So, not surprisingly, it just sounds like Ronald Reagan's take on tariffs and trade is much more nuanced and much more specific. And there were actually instances where he was okay with tariffs, which certainly goes against what the Ontario ad is saying. So now, given all that, I would say the ad is misleading, but at the same time, Donald Trump's reaction is outrageous. So, party foul on both sides, I would say. Ontario, for making this ad, maybe it might be pushing it a little far with the editing and what Reagan meant to say. Although he did it's not like egregious, I'll admit. Like, Reagan said a lot of those things, just with more nuance. It's not egregious, but the idea that all of Canada should be punished, and as a consequence, Americans too. And now all trade negotiations are just off the table with Canada based on this? This was an interesting, like, kind of playing detective and getting to the bottom of this and figuring out what the truth is for this random ad about tariffs. But that is nowhere near enough to base an entire, international trade policy on. That's kind of what I'm landing on here. Okay. So, yeah. I think that's all I've got. Although I have one fun thing. I couldn't help but think during this, hearing this, like, what is fake and what is real, and is this AI or is it not? So I took 5 minutes and made a little Ronald Reagan AI video. I made this. This is not real. Just to show, how scary a time we're living in and sort of how easy it is to manipulate people now with AI. Just to show, this is what I made.
Greetings, YouTube. I hope you're having a great time trying to understand what is real and what is AI generated.
Pretty scary. It turns out AI did not play a part in this, but I couldn't help myself but be like, oh my God. Since we're just talking about, like, I don't know, the manipulation of messaging and like what is real and what's not. And yeah, it's scary. And this was really, really interesting to take a look at. And I'm actually very, very disheartened by all of this. It sounds like, it's hard to tell how serious Trump is about all this. But he is saying, bottom line, all trade negotiations are over, which is horrible. And a really brash statement to just say at 10 o'clock on the toilet. So hopefully that is not the case. And hopefully this does find a resolution, or maybe the ad has to be taken down, or someone has to say something about, I don't know, but this is what I have to say about it. So anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on Donald Trump and what he is saying about Canada and this whole ad business. And that'd be cool to hear about, especially from Canadians out there. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada and seeing Canadian things I've never seen before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.